The envelope was heavy in my hands, cream-colored and expensive, the kind of paper that whispers promises of good things. My name was written in familiar handwriting, Lucia's looping script that always made me think of our college days, passing notes in the back of lecture halls. I stood on the porch of what should have been my house, my dream house, the one I'd spent 8 years teaching English in Seoul, Bangkok, and Dubai to save for. The one with the blue door and the garden space I'd already mentally filled with herbs and flowers. The one I'd told Lucia about over countless video calls, showing her listings, asking her opinion on neighborhoods while she nodded enthusiastically. "Open it outside," the real estate agent had said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Graham thought you might want a moment." Ms. Graham, Lucia Graham, my best friend for 15 years. I tore open the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. The paper inside was the same heavy stock, folded precisely. "Louisa, I know this will come as a shock. I've purchased the house you were interested in. I want you to know it wasn't planned. When I came to visit the neighborhood last month, I fell in love with it too. When your financing hit that snag, I couldn't bear to see someone else get it. I know you'll understand eventually. This way it stays in the family. We can laugh about this someday, I promise. I've left the keys with Marjorie. The guest room is yours anytime. Love, always. Lucia." The letter crumpled in my fist. My throat tightened as I looked up across the tree-lined street. And there she was. Lucia, standing on the porch of my house, waving like she was welcoming me home. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight, her smile wide and expectant. I forced my face into something resembling normal and waved back, though my hand felt disconnected from my body. "Would you like to go inside?" Marjorie asked, jingling the keys. "Ms. Graham has arranged for the utilities to be on." "No," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "I think I need some time." "Of course." She handed me the keys with a sympathetic look. "Take all the time you need." I nodded, unable to speak further, and walked back to my rental car. I could feel Lucia watching me, probably waiting for me to turn around, to run across the street and hug her, to tell her it was fine, that I understood. I didn't turn around. In the safety of my car, I let my forehead rest against the steering wheel. The leather was cool against my skin, grounding me as my mind raced through the implications. The financing snag had been minor, a 2-week delay at most. Lucia knew that. She'd known everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucia. "Are you okay? Come over when you're ready. We should talk." I started the car without responding. The drive to my temporary apartment was a blur, my mind replaying every conversation we'd had about the house. How she'd asked to see the listing. How she'd suggested visiting to help me decide. How she'd been so interested in my mortgage broker's name. It wasn't until I was inside my sterile, rented space that I allowed myself to feel the full force of it. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and finally let the tears come. Not just for the house, though that loss cut deep, but for the friendship I now realized had been built on sand. 8 years of saving, of teaching English to corporate executives and their children, of living in tiny apartments and sending money home, of missing funerals and weddings because I couldn't afford the flights. All for that house. My house. My phone buzzed again. And again. I ignored it, watching the notifications pile up. "Louisa, please talk to me." "It's not what you think. I did this for us." I turned my phone off and stared at the blank wall opposite me. The rage building inside me was unfamiliar, hot and clarifying. I'd always been the understanding one, the one who made peace, who saw the best in people, especially in Lucia. Not anymore. I pulled myself up from the floor and moved to the small desk by the window. Rain had started to fall, pattering against the glass in an irregular rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I opened my laptop and began to type. First, I needed information. About the sale, about property laws, about Lucia's finances, about the neighborhood committee she'd mentioned was so exclusive, about the interior designer, Iris something. She'd bragged about hiring. Then I needed a plan. Because Lucia was right about one thing. This house was going to stay in the family. Just not her family. I opened a new document and titled it, Getting My House Back. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before I began to type, each keystroke a tiny act of war. By the time the rain stopped, I had the beginnings of a strategy. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't nice. But then, neither was betrayal. I finally turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Lucia, her voice artificially bright. Lou, I know you're upset, but when you calm down, you'll see this is for the best. Call me when you're ready to be adults about this. Love you. I deleted the voicemail and opened my contacts. It was time to make some calls of my own. Rain pounded against my apartment window as I stared at my phone. 3 days since I discovered Lucia's betrayal, and the calls hadn't stopped. Friends asking why I wasn't returning her messages. Mutual acquaintances wondering if we were still on for dinner next week. As if my world hadn't just imploded, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Iris Mitchell. The interior designer Lucia had bragged about hiring. The one with the waiting list a mile long. The one who'd transformed the homes of local celebrities and tech executives. My finger hovered over the call button. This was crossing a line. But then again, so was stealing your best friend's dream house. I pressed call. Iris Mitchell Design. The voice was crisp, professional. Hi, I'd like to speak with Iris, please. It's about the Graham property on Maple Street. A pause. May I ask who's calling? I took a deep breath. Louisa Carter. I'm a close friend of Lucia's. Another pause. One moment. My heart hammered as I waited. This was either going to work or blow up spectacularly. This is Iris. The voice was warmer now, curious. Hi, Iris. I'm calling about the house on Maple Street. Lucia suggested I reach out to you directly about some of the design elements we've been discussing. Oh, surprise colored her voice. Lucia didn't mention a consultant. I laughed lightly, the sound almost convincing. That's Lucia for you, always forgetting the details. We've been planning this house for years, actually. I just got back from overseas. I see. Iris's tone shifted slightly. Well, we're still in the preliminary stages. Perhaps we could meet to discuss your input. I have time tomorrow afternoon. Perfect. Your office at 2? See you then. I ended the call and let out the breath I'd been holding. Step 1. Infiltrate. My hands shook as I wrote the appointment in my planner. This wasn't me, scheming, lying. But the alternative was accepting defeat, and I'd spent too many years fighting for this dream. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. How are you holding up? Aiden, my rock through every crisis since college. The one person who knew exactly how much the house meant to me. Not great. Can you meet for coffee? His response was immediate. Corner cafe. 30 Mint. The cafe was busy with the afternoon crowd, but Aiden had secured our usual corner table. He stood when he saw me, his tall frame unfolding as he pulled me into a hug. You look terrible, he said, but his eyes were kind. Thanks. I managed a weak smile as I slid into my seat. That's exactly what a girl wants to hear. He pushed a mug toward me. Already ordered your usual. The familiar scent of chai tea rose in a comforting cloud. You're a lifesaver. So? He said after I'd taken a few sips. What's the plan? I raised an eyebrow. Who says I have a plan? I've known you for 12 years, Lou. You always have a plan. I sighed and leaned forward. I'm meeting with her interior designer tomorrow, pretending to be a consultant. Aiden's eyes widened. That's bold. It's just the beginning. I pulled out my notebook and slid it across the table. I've been doing research. He flipped through the pages, his expression growing more concerned with each turn. Lou, some of this is... looking into zoning violations is one thing, but hacking her email? Not hacking, I corrected. Eric from IT said he could help me recover some of our old conversations, ones where she specifically acknowledged the house was my dream, not hers. And what exactly will that prove? I stared into my tea. I don't know yet, but it's something. Aiden closed the notebook. Have you tried just talking to her? Maybe there's an explanation. An explanation for buying the house out from under me? My voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. I lowered it to a harsh whisper. She knew what she was doing, Aiden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm on your side. Always. I just don't want to see you become someone you're not because of this. Maybe I need to become someone else, I said quietly. Someone who doesn't get walked all over. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Iris. Something's come up. Need to reschedule our meeting. Also, Lucia mentioned you might be reaching out. Said there was some confusion about the property. Let's clear that up when we meet. My stomach dropped. She knows. Who knows what? Aiden asked. I showed him the text. Lucia must have called her. She's on to me. Aiden squeezed my hand. So, change tactics. You don't need to be sneaky about this. Don't I? I pulled my hand away. Because being honest and straightforward has worked so well for me so far. As if on cue, the cafe door opened and Lucia walked in. She was wearing a cream-colored coat I'd helped her pick out last winter, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She scanned the room, and when her eyes landed on our table, her face lit up with that familiar smile, the one that had always made me feel like the most important person in her world. Lou! She called, weaving between tables toward us. Thank God! I've been trying to reach you for days. I felt Aiden tense beside me, ready to intervene if needed. But this was my battle. I've been busy, I said, my voice steady despite the rage boiling just beneath the surface. House hunting, her smile faltered. About that, we really need to talk. Do we? I stood, gathering my things. Because I think you've said everything that matters in that letter. Lou, please! The house was everything to me, Lucia. You knew that. She reached for my arm. That's why I did it. I couldn't let you make such a huge mistake. The foundation is cracked, Lou. The inspection report. I froze. What inspection report? Something flickered across her face. Triumph? Relief? The one you never bothered to read. That's what I've been trying to tell you. What inspection report? I repeated, my voice hollow. Lucia pulled a folded document from her purse and placed it on the table between us. The paper was creased from multiple readings, coffee-stained at one corner. The one your inspector filed 3 weeks ago, she said. The one that shows the foundation is compromised. The one that estimates repairs at nearly $100,000. I stared at the document, my name clearly printed at the top. I never saw this. Your real estate agent was supposed to give it to you. Lucia's voice softened. When I realized you were still moving forward, I knew you hadn't seen it. I couldn't let you sink your life savings into a money pit. Aiden reached for the report, scanning it with a frown. This looks legitimate, Lou. My head was spinning. So you bought a house with a cracked foundation? That makes no sense. I have the money to fix it. You don't. Lucia slid into the chair across from me. I was trying to protect you. By going behind my back? The words tasted bitter. By not telling me what you found? I tried. I called you the day I saw this. You were in Dubai, remember? The connection was terrible, and you were so excited about finalizing the deal. She sighed. I made a split-second decision. Maybe it was wrong, but my intentions. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. The cafe seemed too small suddenly, the air too thick. I needed to think, and I couldn't do it with Lucia's earnest eyes on me, with Aiden's concerned glances. I need to verify this, I said finally. I need to talk to my agent. Of course. Lucia nodded eagerly. And then we can figure this out together. The house can still be yours eventually. Maybe we co-own until the repairs are done, or... I said I need to verify it. I stood abruptly. Aiden, can you... I'll drive you home, he said, understanding immediately. Lucia reached for my hand. Lou, please don't shut me out. Not again. Again. The word hung between us, heavy with history. The 6 months after my mother died, when I disappeared into grief, ignoring her calls. The year in Seoul, when I'd been too busy building my new life to maintain our weekly video chats. "I'll call you," I said, not meeting her eyes. After I talked to my agent. Marjorie's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful real estate agent. Tasteful, expensive, designed to convey trust and competence. She greeted me with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Louisa, what a lovely surprise." "Not really a surprise," I said, placing the inspection report on her desk. "I called and made an appointment." Her eyes flicked to the document, then back to my face. "What can I help you with today? You can explain why I never saw this report. The one that shows the house I was about to buy needs $100,000 in foundation repairs." Marjorie's smile didn't waver. "I sent that report to you 3 weeks ago, by email and certified mail." "I never received either." "Well, that's concerning." She turned to her computer, tapping keys with manicured nails. "Let me check. Yes, here's the email. Sent on the 15th. And I have confirmation the letter was delivered to your apartment building on the 17th. My apartment building, where packages routinely disappeared, where the mail system was notoriously unreliable. "Show me the email," I demanded. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, sent to my personal email, not the work address I'd been using for all our communications. "You sent it to the wrong email," I said, my voice tight. "We've been using my work email for everything." A flicker of genuine concern crossed her face. I'm so sorry. I must have used the address from your initial inquiry." "And you never followed up? Never called to confirm I'd received it? For a report this serious?" Marjorie's professional veneer cracked slightly. "I assumed when you continued with the purchase that you decided to handle the repairs yourself. Many buyers do." "Many buyers with an extra $100,000 lying around?" I laughed bitterly. "Did Lucia Graham see this report?" Her hesitation told me everything. "How?" I pressed. "How did she get access to my inspection report?" Marjorie shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Graham is a long-time client. When she expressed interest in the property, I may have mentioned the inspection findings. In general terms, of course." "In general terms," I repeated. "And then she made an all-cash offer, knowing I'd hit a financing delay. I can't discuss another client's transaction details." I stood, gathering the report. "You won't have to. I'll be filing a complaint with the Real Estate Commission. Expect to hear from them." I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd learned. Marjorie had screwed up. The house really did have serious issues. And Lucia had still gone behind my back, had still made decisions about my life without consulting me, had still taken something that was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. "Any news?" I started typing, then stopped. What could I say? That Lucia might have been trying to help? That I'd spent days plotting revenge against someone who thought she was protecting me? Another text came through, this one from Lucia. "Whatever Marjorie told you, remember she's covering her own mistakes. Call me when you're ready to talk about solutions." Solutions? As if this were a simple problem to solve, not a fundamental breach of trust. I started the car and headed toward the one place I needed to see for myself. The house on Maple Street. My house. Lucia's house. The house with the cracked foundation. As I turned onto the street, I spotted a familiar figure on the front porch. Not Lucia, but Iris Mitchell, the interior designer. She was examining the front door, making notes on a tablet. I parked across the street and watched her work, an idea forming. Maybe I didn't need to fight Lucia for a flawed house. Maybe what I needed was leverage, something to ensure she never blindsided me again. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Milena, it's Louisa. I need your advice." Milena's apartment hadn't changed in the 5 years since I'd last visited. Books still lined every wall, plants crowded the windows, and the scent of cardamom and cloves hung in the air. My former English professor sat across from me, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a loose bun, her dark eyes studying me over reading glasses. So, she said, setting down her teacup, you want to use what you know about this designer to— What exactly? I shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. Not blackmail, just leverage. Louisa. My name in her mouth sounded like disappointment. I know how it sounds, I admitted. But Lucia crossed a line. She went behind my back, made decisions about my life without consulting me. Like you're planning to do to her? The question hit like a slap. I stared into my tea, watching the leaves swirl at the bottom of the cup. It's different, I said finally. Yea, is it? Milena leaned forward. When you came to me all those years ago, desperate to escape your life here, what did I tell you? That running away doesn't solve problems, I recited. It just changes the scenery. And revenge doesn't heal betrayal. It just gives you something to focus on besides the pain. I set my cup down with more force than necessary. So I'm just supposed to accept what she did? Let her keep the house? I didn't say that. Milena's voice softened. But there's a difference between standing up for yourself and becoming the thing that hurt you. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lucia. I ignored it. What would you do? I asked. Milena considered this. I'd start by having an honest conversation. Not about the house, but about the friendship. Because this isn't really about property, is it? The truth of her words settled heavily in my chest. This wasn't just about the house. It was about years of feeling second best to Lucia's needs. About the pattern of her making decisions for my own good, without consulting me. And if the conversation doesn't work, I asked, then you decide what matters more, winning or keeping your integrity. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Now, tell me about this interior designer. What makes you think she has secrets worth leveraging? I parked down the street from Iris's office the next morning, watching as she unlocked the front door. My conversation with Milena had left me conflicted, but I wasn't ready to abandon my plan entirely. Not yet. Iris's design firm occupied a converted Victorian in the Arts District. Through the large front windows, I could see her moving around, setting up for the day. I checked my watch, 15 minutes until her first appointment, according to the schedule Eric had helped me access. My phone rang. Aiden. Where are you? He asked when I answered. I stopped by your apartment. Following up on something, I said vaguely. Something or someone? His tone was knowing. Lou, tell me you're not stalking Iris Mitchell. Not stalking, observing. He sighed. This isn't you. The Lou I know doesn't lurk in cars watching people. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. The words came out sharper than intended. Maybe I don't. He agreed quietly. The Lou I know values honesty above all else. The Lou I know would confront problems head-on, not scheme around them. The Lou you know got her dream house stolen by her best friend. And that sucks. It really does. But this path you're on, it leads somewhere dark, Lou. I watched as a client entered Iris's office, a tall woman with a designer handbag and confident stride. I have to go. Lou! I ended the call and got out of my car. It was now or never. The bell above the door chimed as I entered the design studio. Iris looked up from her desk, recognition flickering across her face. Louisa, she said, her tone carefully neutral. I wasn't expecting you. I was hoping we could talk. I glanced at the client, who was browsing fabric samples. Privately. Iris hesitated, then nodded. Jenny, would you mind giving us a moment? Help yourself to coffee in the back room. Once we were alone, Iris gestured to a chair. I assume this is about the Maple Street property. Indirectly. I sat, maintaining eye contact. It's about your business practices. Her expression hardened. Excuse me? 3 years ago, you were involved in a lawsuit with a client named Darren. He claimed you were taking kickbacks from contractors, inflating their bids and pocketing the difference. Iris's face paled slightly. That case was dismissed because Darren couldn't afford to continue, not because you were innocent. I leaned forward. I have copies of emails between you and Premier Construction discussing your consulting fees. Where did you get those? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Does it matter? I kept my tone even, though my heart was racing. What matters is that the licensing board would find them very interesting. Iris stood abruptly, moving to close the blinds on the front windows. When she turned back to me, her composure had returned. What do you want? The question hung between us. What did I want? Revenge? The house? Or something else entirely? I want you to drop Lucia as a client, I said finally, and I want information. Information about what? About why she really bought that house. Because I don't believe it was to protect me from a bad investment. Iris studied me for a long moment. You two have been friends for how long? 15 years? And you're willing to threaten me, potentially ruin my career, to get back at her? Put that way, it sounded petty, vindictive, not like me at all. I'm willing to do what it takes to understand what happened, I amended, and to make sure it never happens again. Iris sank back into her chair. Lucia came to me 6 months ago, long before you had an offer on the house. 6 months! My mind raced. That's impossible. I only found the listing 3 months ago. She knew about it before it was listed. She's been planning to buy that house for a while, Louisa. Iris hesitated. And it has nothing to do with the foundation. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Then why? That's something you need to ask her. Iris reached for her phone. Now, are you going to report me, or can we both agree this conversation never happened? I stood on shaky legs. I need to think. As I reached the door, Iris called after me. For what it's worth, I think you're asking the right questions, just not in the right way. Outside, I leaned against my car, struggling to breathe. 6 months. Lucia had known about the house for 6 months, before I'd even found it, before there was any inspection report. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Lucia. Meet me at Riverfront Park, North Entrance, 3 p.m. Eric's. Riverfront Park was crowded with afternoon joggers and parents pushing strollers. I scanned the north entrance, spotting Eric on a bench overlooking the water. His lanky frame was hunched over a laptop, dark hair falling across his forehead as he typed. This is cryptic, even for IT guys, I said, sitting beside him. Eric glanced up, his eyes darting nervously around us before returning to his screen. I found something you should see. About Lucia? He nodded, angling the laptop toward me. I recovered those emails you asked for, but I found something else, something weird. The screen showed a series of email exchanges between Lucia and someone named Marcus. I skimmed the first few messages, my confusion growing. Who's Marcus? Property developer, specializes in historic renovations. Eric pointed to a line in one of the emails. See this? They're discussing the Maple Street house, from 8 months ago. My stomach clenched. 8 months? That's... Before it was even listed for sale. Before you ever mentioned it to her. Eric scrolled down. And look at this one. The email was dated just 2 weeks ago. Lucia. The City Council approved the rezoning request yesterday. Once we secure the remaining properties on the block, we can move forward with the development plan. Your investment in 1422 Maple puts us at 80% ownership of the target area. The foundation issue is a blessing in disguise. It gives us legitimate grounds to demolish rather than preserve. Congratulations on your foresight. This will be the development deal of the decade. Marcus. I read it twice, my hands growing cold. She's planning to tear it down? For some development project? Eric nodded grimly. The whole block, eventually. Look at the attachment. He opened a PDF, architectural renderings of a modern mixed-use complex, retail spaces on the ground floor, luxury apartments above, where my house, where the entire historic neighborhood currently stood. She lied, I whispered, about everything. There's more. Eric hesitated. She's been monitoring your emails. That's why I wanted to meet in person. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. What? There's a forwarding rule on your personal account. Everything gets copied to an address I traced back to her. It's been active for at least a year. A year? Every email I'd sent or received, every conversation about the house, about my plans, about my finances. Why would she? I couldn't finish the question. Eric closed his laptop. Money, the development plan mentions expected returns of 300% for early investors. I stood abruptly, needing to move, to breathe. I have to go. Louisa, wait. Eric caught my arm. There's something else you should know. She's not doing this alone. There are other investors. Who? His eyes met mine. Aiden's name is on the investor list. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. Aiden, my rock, my confidant, the person I trusted most after Lucia, both betraying me. Night had fallen by the time I found myself outside Aiden's apartment building. Lights glowed warmly behind his third-floor windows. I sat in my car, watching shadows move across the blinds. Was he alone? Was Lucia there? Were they laughing about how easily I'd been manipulated? My phone buzzed with a text from him. I know you're outside. Come up. Of course he knew. He probably had my phone tracked too. The elevator ride to his floor felt endless. Each step down the hallway required conscious effort. When I knocked, the door opened immediately. Aiden stood there, concern etched on his face. Lou, what's going on? You've been sitting outside for 20 minutes. I pushed past him into the apartment. Tell me about the development project. He froze, color draining from his face. What? Don't. My voice shook with rage. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. The project that's going to tear down my house, the whole neighborhood, the one you and Lucia invested in. Aiden closed the door slowly. How did you find out? Does it matter? You lied to me, both of you. It's not what you think. He moved toward me, hands raised placatingly. Then what is it? I demanded. Explain how my two closest friends conspired behind my back to destroy my dream. We were trying to protect you. The words burst from him. That neighborhood is dying, Lou. The development is inevitable. We wanted to make sure you didn't sink your life savings into a house that would be worthless in 2 years. So you decided to profit from it instead? Without telling me? I wanted to tell you. He ran a hand through his hair. Lucia thought it would be better to wait until after. After what? After you'd secured all the properties? After demolition began? I laughed bitterly. When exactly was the right time to mention you were destroying my dream house? Aiden sank onto the couch. It's complicated, Lou. It's really not. I remained standing, needing the physical advantage. You chose money over honesty, over me. That's not fair. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I invested because Lucia convinced me it was the only way to ensure you got something out of this. The returns would have more than paid for a better house in a better neighborhood. But it wasn't your decision to make. The words tore from my throat. It was mine. My life. My choice. My dream. Lou? No. I stepped back. I trusted you, both of you, and you treated me like a child who couldn't make her own decisions. We were trying to help. By lying, by spying on my emails, by manipulating me. Each question felt like ripping off a bandage, exposing raw wounds beneath. That's not help, Aiden. That's control. He stood, reaching for me. Please, just listen. I backed away. I'm done listening to lies. As I turned to leave, he called after me. What are you going to do? I paused at the door, a cold clarity settling over me. What I should have done from the beginning. Fight back. Outside, my phone rang. Lucia. I answered with steady hands. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I know you've been digging. It's time you heard the whole truth. Fine, I replied. Tomorrow. At the house. Noon. Lou! And Lucia? Bring the property documents. All of them. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spread documents across my apartment floor. Emails Eric had recovered, property records I'd requested from the county clerk, zoning applications filed under Marcus's development company. By dawn, I had a clearer picture of what I was facing, a meticulously planned project with powerful backers and millions at stake. And at the center of it all, Lucia, my best friend. My phone buzzed with a text from Milena. Whatever you're planning for today, remember who you are. Who was I? The question echoed as I showered and dressed. The person I'd been a week ago, trusting, forgiving, conflict avoidant, seemed like a stranger now. That Louisa would never confront her best friend. That Louisa would swallow her hurt and move on. But that Louisa didn't know what betrayal really felt like. I arrived at the house 30 minutes early, parking across the street to gather my thoughts. The blue door that had once represented my future now seemed to mock me. I'd imagined myself walking through it thousands of times, coming home to a place that was truly mine. A taxi pulled up, and Stephen stepped out. My stomach dropped. Stephen, the fellow English teacher I'd met in Bangkok 3 years ago. The one who'd followed his own betrayal to a dark place I'd promised myself I'd never go. "What are you doing here?" I asked as he approached my car. He leaned down to the window, his familiar crooked smile not reaching his eyes. "Aiden called me, said you might need a friend who understands." "Aiden has no right to be worried about you." Stephen opened my car door. "Come on, let's walk." Reluctantly, I joined him on the sidewalk. We strolled in silence for a minute before he spoke again. "Remember what I told you in Bangkok about my business partner?" I nodded. Stephen's partner had stolen his investment, leaving him bankrupt and stranded in Thailand. "I spent 2 years plotting revenge," he continued. "Followed him to Singapore, gathered dirt, nearly destroyed his new business." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "Want to know what I got for all that effort?" "Justice," I suggested. An ulcer, depression, and the realization that I'd wasted 2 years of my life on someone who'd forgotten about me within months. His eyes held mine. "Revenge is a poison you drink yourself, Lou." "This isn't about revenge," I insisted. "It's about standing up for myself." "Is it?" Stephen glanced toward the house. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to burn down your life to spite Lucia." "She betrayed me." "Yes, she did." He nodded. "And that's on her. What you do next, that's on you." A sleek black car pulled up to the house. Lucia stepped out, dressed impeccably as always, a portfolio tucked under her arm. She spotted us and hesitated before walking to the front door. "I have to do this," I said. Stephen squeezed my shoulder. "Just remember, there's a difference between confronting someone and destroying them. One leaves room for you to heal. The other—" He shook his head. "The other leaves nothing but ashes." He walked away, leaving me alone with his words echoing in my mind. I took a deep breath and crossed the street. Lucia opened the door before I could knock. The house smelled of fresh paint and new carpeting. Renovations had already begun. "You're early," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "So are you." We stood awkwardly in the entryway, 15 years of friendship suddenly insufficient for this moment. "I brought the documents," she finally said, gesturing to the portfolio on a small table. "Everything about the development project." I moved past her into what would have been the living room. The space was empty except for 2 folding chairs facing each other. "Expecting a showdown?" I asked, nodding toward the chairs. "Expecting a conversation?" Lucia remained by the door. "One that's long overdue." I sat, crossing my arms. "So talk." She joined me, placing the portfolio between us. "First, I want to say I'm sorry. Not for buying the house. I still believe that was the right call, but for how I did it, for not being honest with you." "Why?" The question contained multitudes. Why lie? Why betray me? Why this house? The development project started a year ago. Marcus approached me about investing. He needed someone with connections to local property owners. She opened the portfolio, revealing maps and plans. "This neighborhood is prime real estate, Lou. The returns will be astronomical." And that justifies lying to me? No. She met my gaze directly. Nothing justifies that. But when you told me you were interested in this specific house, she sighed. I panicked. We already had commitments from most of the block. This was the last property we needed. So you bought it out from under me. I tried to steer you toward other neighborhoods first. Remember those listings I sent? The ones you dismissed without even looking? I did remember. I'd been so fixated on this house, this street. The foundation issues are real, she continued. That wasn't a lie. But yes, we plan to demolish and rebuild regardless. And monitoring my emails? Was that part of your protection too? Lucia flinched. That was Marcus's idea. After you mentioned looking at properties in this area, I should have said no. But you didn't. The betrayal still stung, sharp and fresh. You invaded my privacy, you and Aiden both. Aiden didn't know about the emails, she said quickly. He only invested because I convinced him it would help you in the long run. I laughed bitterly. Everyone making decisions about my life except me. I know how it looks. Do you? I stood, unable to remain still. Do you know what it's like to discover the two people you trust most have been manipulating you? Planning to profit from your disappointment? That's not fair. None of this is fair, my voice echoed in the empty room. I spent 8 years, Lucia, saving for this, working jobs I hated in countries where I knew no one, missing funerals and weddings and birthdays, all for this house. And you would have lost everything when the development went through. She stood to face me. The neighborhood would have changed around you. Property values would have plummeted during construction, then skyrocketed beyond what you could afford in taxes. That should have been my choice to make. You're right. The admission seemed to deflate her. You're right. And I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you, but I was controlling you. Just like my mother, I finished. The realization hit like a physical blow. You became exactly what I was trying to escape. Lucia winced. I never meant to. But you did. I moved to the window, looking out at the street. So what now? The development moves forward? You get rich, and I get what? Your apology? You get this. She pulled a document from the portfolio and held it out. 20% of my investment share. It's already done. The paperwork was filed yesterday. I stared at the document without taking it. You think you can buy me off? I think I can make this right. Her voice cracked slightly. I think I can give you a future instead of a money pit. The returns on this investment will buy you any house you want, Lou. A better one. It was never about the house itself. My throat tightened. It was about having something that was mine, something no one could take away. I know. Lucia set the document on the chair. And I took that from you. I can't undo it, but I can try to make amends. The front door opened before I could respond. Aiden's voice called from the entryway. Lou? Lucia? We need to talk. He appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Marcus is on his way, with the demolition permits. Lucia paled. That's impossible. The community review period doesn't end for another month. He expedited it. Aiden looked at me. I'm sorry, Lou. I just found out. They're starting demolition tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word echoed in my head as I looked around the room that should have been my living room, in the house that should have been my home. So that's it? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Game over? Not necessarily. Aiden stepped fully into the room. There's still one option left, but it's risky. What option? Lucia and I asked simultaneously. The historical preservation clause. His eyes met mine. The one you found in the original deed. The historical preservation clause? Lucia stared at Aiden. What are you talking about? I moved to the window, heart pounding. It was in the original property records. A covenant from 1923 stating that the house cannot be demolished due to its historical significance. That's impossible, Lucia shook her head. Marcus's team would have found it. They did. Aiden pulled out his phone, showing us an email. They found it and buried it. I discovered it when I was reviewing the title documents last night. Outside, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out, followed by two others carrying briefcases. Marcus, Lucia whispered. We don't have much time, Aiden said urgently. Lou, do you still have those property records you requested? I nodded, pulling folded papers from my bag. The original deed and covenant. But will it be enough? They clearly have connections at the city. It will be if we can get it to the right people before demolition starts. Aiden took the papers, scanning them quickly. The Historical Preservation Society has an emergency injunction process specifically for situations like this. Lucia grabbed her phone. I'll call my lawyer. Your lawyer works for Marcus, I reminded her. She paused, then nodded. You're right. We need someone independent. The front door opened. Heavy footsteps approached. Ladies! Marcus's voice was smooth as oil as he entered the room. I see Aiden's joined our little gathering. How convenient. He was taller than I'd expected, with silver hair and the confident stance of someone used to getting his way. The two men flanking him remained silent, watchful. Marcus! Lucia stepped forward. We need to talk about the demolition schedule. Nothing to discuss. He smiled thinly. Permits are approved. Work begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. There's a problem with that plan, I said, finding my voice. This house is protected by a historical covenant. Marcus's smile didn't waver. That old thing? It was invalidated years ago. The paperwork's already been processed. Invalidated how? Aiden challenged. The covenant requires approval from the Historical Society Board to be overturned. There's no record of that happening. A flicker of annoyance crossed Marcus's face. These technical details are hardly worth discussing. The project is moving forward. Not if we file an emergency injunction, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. And who exactly is we? Marcus looked between us. Lucia is my business partner. Aiden is an investor. And you? His eyes narrowed. You have no standing whatsoever. Actually, Lucia interrupted, I've transferred 20% of my shares to Louisa. She's an investor now, too. Marcus's composure slipped momentarily. You did what? It's done, she said firmly. Paperwork filed yesterday. That's a breach of our agreement. His voice hardened. Sue me. Lucia moved to stand beside me. But the demolition isn't happening tomorrow. Marcus studied us, calculating. This is disappointing, Lucia. I thought you understood what was at stake. He turned to one of his associates. Call Judge Wilson. Tell him we need to discuss the Maple Street project. My stomach dropped. Of course he had a judge in his pocket. While you're making calls, Aiden said, holding up his phone, you should know I'm on with Diane from the Tribune. She's very interested in how demolition permits for a historically protected property were expedited through the system. Marcus's face darkened. You're bluffing. Want to find out? Aiden put the phone on speaker. Diane, you still there? Yes, a woman's voice replied. And I'm recording, Mr. Davis. You were saying about the Maple Street Historical Covenant? The room fell silent. Marcus stared at Aiden, then at me, then at Lucia. This isn't over, he said finally. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I stepped forward, I think we do. A developer willing to falsify documents, bribe officials, and bully property owners to get what he wants. You can't prove any of that. We don't have to. I gestured to Aiden's phone. We just have to raise enough questions to trigger an investigation. How many city officials were expediting permits for you, Marcus? How many judges? His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. No, Lucia said quietly. The mistake was thinking we could build something worthwhile by destroying what matters to people. Marcus turned to her, betrayal flashing in his eyes. After everything I've done for you, you've done nothing for me, she cut him off. You used me for my connections. just like I used Louisa for her trust. We were both wrong. He stared at her for a long moment, then at me. Fine. Have your little victory today. But remember, people like me always win in the end. With that, he turned and stalked out, his associates hurrying after him. As the front door slammed, my knees nearly buckled. Aiden ended the call and caught my arm. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. Did we just win? For now, he said. But he's right. This isn't over. What happens next? I asked, looking between them. Lucia picked up the property documents from the chair. We file these with the Historical Society, get that emergency injunction, and then, she hesitated, then we figure out what to do with this house. We? I raised an eyebrow. If you'll let me help, she said softly. I know I don't deserve it. The anger I'd been nursing for days still burned, but alongside it was something else, a strange sense of clarity. Standing up to Marcus had felt right in a way that plotting revenge never had. The foundation still needs fixing, I said finally. I know a guy, Aiden offered. Honest work, fair prices. I moved to the window again, looking out at the street. The house across the way, the one Lucia had been watching me from that first day, now seemed like part of another life. I need to think, I said, about all of this. Of course. Lucia gathered her things. Take all the time you need. As they turned to leave, I called after them. Wait! They paused, looking back expectantly. The historical covenant, I said. It doesn't just protect this house, it covers the entire block. Understanding dawned on their faces. The whole development, Aiden breathed. It can't happen, not the way Marcus planned. No, I agreed. It can't. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope unfurling in my chest. Not because I'd won, but because I'd found my voice, my power. I think, I said slowly, we need to call a neighborhood meeting. The community center buzzed with voices as I stood at the podium, surveying the packed room. Every chair was filled, with people lining the walls and spilling into the hallway. Neighbors who'd never spoken were now deep in conversation, united by a common threat. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. As you know, we've called this meeting to discuss the future of our neighborhood. From the front row, Iris gave me an encouraging nod. Beside her sat Milena, who'd helped organize this gathering, reaching out to her network of local activists and historians. Aiden stood at the back, arms crossed, watching the crowd's reactions. Lucia was conspicuously absent. 3 days ago, we obtained an emergency injunction, stopping the demolition of properties on Maple Street. I continued. But that's just a temporary measure. Marcus and his development company will fight back. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Marcus's reputation, his connections. What they don't know, I said, pulling out a folder, is that we have options they never considered. I outlined the plan we'd developed. A community land trust that would purchase properties from willing sellers at fair market value, preserving the historic character while allowing for sensible renovations and improvements. The historical covenant would be our legal foundation, but community ownership would be our strength. This isn't just about stopping a developer, I explained. It's about taking control of our neighborhood's future. Questions came rapid fire. How would it be funded? Who would manage the trust? What about homeowners who wanted to sell? I answered each one, drawing on research I'd done with Milena and the legal framework Aiden had helped develop. With each response, I felt more certain, more in command. This was what I'd been searching for all along, not just a house, but a home. A place where I belonged, where my voice mattered. As the meeting wound down, people approached with offers of help, expertise, and funding. A local attorney volunteered legal services. A retired architect offered to assess properties. A group of young professionals pledged to create a website and social media campaign. You did good, Milena said, squeezing my arm as the crowd thinned. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, I replied. Any of you. Actually, you could have. Aiden joined us. That's what you never realized, Lou. You've always had this in you. I was about to respond when the community center door opened and Lucia walked in. The room quieted immediately, all eyes turning toward her. She looked different, less polished, more authentic. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her usual designer clothes replaced by jeans and a sweater. Sorry I'm late, she said, approaching slowly. I had something to finish. I met her halfway. I didn't think you were coming. I almost didn't. She handed me an envelope. But you needed to see this. Inside was a legal document, a deed transfer, for the house on Maple Street. My name was listed as the new owner. I don't understand, I said, looking up at her. It's yours, she explained. No strings attached. I've signed it over to you completely. But the foundation is being repaired, she smiled faintly. Consider it part of my apology. The room had emptied now, leaving just the two of us in the center, Aiden and Milena watching from a respectful distance. Why? I asked simply. Because you were right. Lucia's composure cracked slightly. About all of it. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but I was controlling you, just like my mother, I finished. And yours, she added quietly. We both grew up with mothers who thought they knew best, who made our decisions for us. I swore I'd never be like that, and then I became exactly what I hated. The revelation hit me with unexpected force. Lucia's controlling mother had been a constant topic during our college years. How different she was from my own passive, distant one. Yet somehow we'd both ended up in the same pattern. The house is just a house, Lou, she continued. What matters is that you get to decide what happens to it. Renovation, demolition, selling it to the land trust, whatever you choose. And Marcus? We'll have to find another project. A hint of her old confidence returned. I've withdrawn my investment, and I've provided some interesting documents to the district attorney about his permitting practices. I stared at the deed in my hands, emotions swirling. This was what I'd wanted. My house, my choice. Yet it felt different now. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I said honestly. I know, she nodded. I'm not asking for that. Just for the chance to earn back your trust someday. She turned to leave, but I caught her arm. The neighborhood meeting next week, I said. We could use someone with your financial expertise. If you're interested. A careful smile. I'll be there. After she left, I walked to the window, watching as she crossed the parking lot. Aiden joined me, his reflection appearing beside mine in the glass. You okay? He asked. Getting there. I tapped the deed against my palm. I own a house. With a cracked foundation, he reminded me. Don't we all? I said, and he laughed. Outside, the sun was setting over the neighborhood. My neighborhood. The houses stood solid against the darkening sky, each with its own history, its own stories. Including mine now. I folded the deed and placed it in my bag. Tomorrow, I'd file the paperwork, make it official. Tomorrow, I'd start planning the repairs, the renovations, the future. But tonight, I just wanted to stand here and breathe, feeling the weight of ownership, not just of a house, but of my choices, my path forward. Ready to go home? Aiden asked. I nodded, suddenly certain. Yes, but not to the blue house, not yet. Some dreams change shape when you hold them in your hands. Some foundations need more than concrete to be truly solid, and some houses become homes only after you've fought for them. Not against others, but against the parts of yourself that settled for less than you deserved.